going to introduce our speaker today, who is from Khayelitsha in the Western Cape and has dedicated his life to rescuing the great African kelp forest. His work bridges science, policy, and communities, and he is aiming for better coordination in safeguarding ocean ecosystems. He emphasizes the integration of scientific research and indigenous knowledge to restore our coexistence with nature. And so I'm very honored and excited today to welcome Loyiso Dunga.
Hello, folks from the University of Free State. How are you feeling? Underwater, we use a lot of sign, so I'm good. I'm good. If you are perfect, that's incredible. Yeah, thank you, Aisha, for that introduction. It's often very packed than how simple I am. Just a young man who's in love with the ocean. I think since this conversation is with a university, it's fitting for me to start at the very beginning, where I come from, where am I going, and how I discovered the magic that I discovered along the way of this journey of mine. So yeah, I studied at the University of Western Cape. That's where this all started for me. I majored in hydrogeology. I focused in environmental and water sciences. I never really thought that my journey would take me to the ocean. Yeah, I don't think I had a desire anyways. So I did my undergrad and honors, and then I finished. I had a bit of time after finishing my honors, and I went to join a company called Senbi. This is where I actually got, for the first time, to get to see what lies under the ocean. I'm someone who grew up loving National Geographics. I'm a huge fan of David Attenborough. So I would have seen a couple of documentaries and series about the ocean. But for the first time after joining CNB, I got to see what is in our doorstep, the different creatures that are in our oceans and waters. And that was quite, for me, astounding and surprising at the same time, because, wow, it linked with something profound that I once heard when I was young, that the ocean is the heart of the creator because of the different things you can't even imagine that are existing down there. So I started to process images that the team brought from their explorations when they went offshore. And I knew that if I could take my career forward, I would like to align it with this space. 5 months later, didn't take me long. 5 months later, I started my master's at UCT now, and I mapped South Africa's Cape Forest ecosystems. That is how my first step into the ocean looked like. The project was very basic because I'm a very basic and simple man. I needed to sit down, process imagery using remote sensing and GIS, and then write up, and then my thesis would have been done. But yeah, this is where the story really begins. So before I dive into this story I'll be sharing with everyone, I would like just to get a sense of the people that are in this room. Aisha, can I please ask you just to indicate, like, the people that are joining us, what course are they doing? What level are they in? Yeah, I think that's going to be a very good start for me.
Okay, so I think maybe I must ask the lecturer, Candice.
Okay, yes. So Loyiso, we have met briefly online. So I did my PhD in fish parasitology. And after that, I went to Belgium and I did a master's in nematology, but free living and plant parasitic nematodes. And now I'm basically a lecturer, well, still a lecturer, and part of the furniture here in the department. So yes, so I'm going to give over to the 3 students.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I am studying botany and zoology.
Hello, I am Yanku and I am doing zoology and genetics at the moment.
Hi, I'm JC. I'm doing zoology and entomology.
Incredible. Okay. Nice to meet you guys. Yeah. Are we all in third year? Did I hear that correctly? Or is it different? Okay, okay, amazing. I mean, I was once upon a time in third year also. This is where I get to reveal a little bit of my age. I am not as young as I look. Yeah, but I really enjoy when I'm having these discussions with fellow young people, because like I like to share what I see when I speak to young people. And like Candice just mentioned now, um, for me, when I see the future leaders, people that are going to be taking up the different spaces, people that are going to be helping to safeguard the different species that you are studying, to expand the knowledge in the different disciplines that you are focusing on at the moment. But also quite importantly is people that, although the science is teaching us to be focusing in different disciplines, what is the surprise that's waiting for you all out there is the interdisciplinarity of the world. So you'll find yourselves more and more having to consult with social scientists. That's not what science readies us for. It's quite interesting. You find that science requires us not to be objective, right? Yeah, you'll find that in the world where we're going, you have to be very objective. You have to go beyond that ask or that hypothesis to gain intricate and emotional connections with your subjects. So that was a pleasant surprise for me. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have been where I am in the work that I'm doing. As Aisha mentioned, like the work really centers around raising awareness about the Great African Sea Forest. These are the magnificent kelp forest ecosystems. In short, or in plain, I like to say like these are forests that ventured into the ocean. So everything that you know about the forest, it actually exists in multiple folds underneath the big blue blanket. So in terms of what I do professionally at the moment, I'm an executive director for a project called the Seas of Good Hope. So you really took a scientist and you shook him. I was quite excited to see the name of the project I'm working with having emotions on it, like, because all centers around building hope in how people can come together to help us safeguard South Africa's marine heritage. So I am working for an organization called Palais for the Ocean. The organization is based in New York City, but I am seconded to SANBI, the South African National Biodiversity Institute. So once I got these funds, I took them home because that was the only way I was going to be able to roll out the project nationally. I'm also a founder of a school called the Ocean Village Hub, where I take marine biology back to the community that actually groomed me, that made out of me a fine product. So I'm gonna jump straight into it then. I really would like this to be a conversation. So I'm quite encouraged to be seeing you. I'm gonna invite your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings throughout the process. Please do oblige me. You are all at the very least familiar with the vast ocean that we have bordering or hugging South Africa. Can I get a nod or a no nod? Okay, perfect. Going down this path of a marine biologist for me has been quite incredible, because most of the times I found myself lost. And then I went back home. It was my grandfather who reminded me through his indigenous knowledge lenses of the things that I already knew. But because I was learning a different language, I was learning a different knowledge system, I felt lost. I remember vividly one day saying to him, don't you remember when your grandmother would say to you, take a sip because you were complaining you have a stomach ache. Seawater helps with this. Do you not remember that there's a specific place in the ocean where all animals rush to hide, to seek shelter, because the storm always passes? Do you not recall that the thicket is safest for the prey? That's where all the penguins, all the octopuses, all the critters run and hide to protect themselves. Do you not remember those things? Do you not remember what happens when you take a second breath? Can we all take a deep breath? A second breath. We have the ocean to thank for that, and particularly the phytoplankton and the seaweeds that create the oxygen that we breathe. So these are the things that really helped me to find home in a place was very, very far from home. And it taught me a significant principle that the ocean has many, many different meanings to different people, and they manifest in different ways. Perhaps this for me was the starting point, because I realized if we build on top of these different connections, different understandings, different ways of manifesting or making sense of the knowledge that the ocean presents to us, maybe that way we can come to a common language to understand what is at stake when we talk about protecting the ocean. The ocean, as Mother Nature, shows us various examples, shows us clues which we need to take actually in order for us to perfect the art of how we protect it. Most of the times when people think about ocean protection, they think of the unique and iconic species that we find there. But there is much, much deeper things that lie beneath the ocean. I want to just ask you about empathy. Do you ever think about the ocean and think about empathy? How does the ocean make you feel? When you are there listening to those sounds of the waves, what do you really hear? Does the ocean speak to you? What does your heart feel? And what do you see? Beyond the normal, the blue waters, and maybe that image of a whale, but what do you really see? So what I want to do now, I want to ask you this. If you can just go back, what would be your first memory of the ocean? You can give me 2 words. What comes to mind if you think back? This is maybe the first memory I have that comes to mind. I'm going to invite Aisha also and Maret to also share with us. I don't want to leave Prof. Liesl also. So I think it's a nice and intimate group, so we can all just share. What is your first memory of the ocean? So maybe let's start with Dr. Candice and the team in the auditorium.
Well, if I had to think, I don't know how old I was, but I just remember being with my brother and my father, just standing in the waves, watching the waves and digging your feet into the sand as the wave resides. So yes, it was, yes, I think that's basically, I was never afraid of the, well, I'm wary of the sea, but yes, it wasn't like I didn't want to go. So I wanted to be there. Yes, I didn't want to run away.
Thank you.
My first memory was standing on the beach and a bunch of sardines were like right on the shore, and I remember catching a bucket full of them.
Amazing. Thank you.
My family has been going to the ocean basically once a year, every year. So I've been going to the ocean my entire life. However, the first concrete memory I have was cresting a mountain in the car and then seeing the ocean on the other side for the first time in like a year with my family. That's one of the best moments I have.
Amazing, incredible stuff.
My first memory was also when I went on vacation with my family. And I remember when I got there, I was first scared of the waves. But then when my father went deeper into the ocean, I also started following him. And yeah, that's my first memory.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Aisha.
Yeah, my first memory is also because I lived in Kimberley at the time, which is inland. And so it was also at the ocean, also with my family. And my dad and I used to run towards the ocean. And when the wave was coming out, we used to run away from the ocean. And I can still remember that really well.
Awesome stuff.
I don't know if you want to open it up to the bigger audience, the
Please,
secondary audience.
I'm only seeing, yeah, please, if there's more people, I can't see. Sorry about that. Thank you though, Aisha. Yes.
Okay, so let's start, in alphabetical order, let's start with CL.
Hello. My my earliest memory of the sea, gosh, honestly I can't remember a specific time. I've been a beach baby since I can remember, and we have some family who live by the coast. I don't live on the coast now, but we've got family who live there. And yeah, I mean, I've got photos of me swimming from like as early as about 6 months paddling in the sea. So but we luckily live in Kenya and the sea's nice and warm, so I was very spoiled with that. Yeah.
Incredible. Thank you, Sue.
We're going to go to Jenny Wagner.
Hi there. I grew up in East London, so we did also experience a lot of trips to the beach, down to Shelley Beach. And I remember when the wind was blowing, really being small and being pelted by these shingles. And that was sore, but also getting really badly sunburnt. And wow, well, we're still alive today, so thank goodness. But another time I was down at Hibberdine, and we just got down to the sea, went down to the beach, and I was wearing shorts. We sort of started climbing up some rocks, and the next thing, this wave came out of nowhere, and we could have so easily been washed off those rocks, but I had sea sand in the hems of my shorts forever. That's how hard it hit us. But we know not to turn our backs on the sea. It's dangerous.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Okay, Louis, so I think we can continue.
We can continue. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I find this exercise quite inspiring because it really changes and shifts the understanding of the ocean. It also makes it very personal. Like family, always family comes through. Somehow people become brave when they approach the ocean for the first time with family. Like if daddy is doing it, yeah, okay, maybe you're following his footsteps. Like that's quite incredible. But also the size, the magnitude of the ocean somehow always comes across. So be it if you see it as a horizon or you see it as something that is stalking you. I love Jenny's reflection there that you never turn your back. You never turn your back in the ocean, like because that speaks to its power, that speaks to its imposing presence. And someone mentioned like there's calm to it. So if you go to the ocean, you can be grounded, you can be calm. Someone also raised fear. So like I was a little bit afraid of the ocean, and then I saw someone, and then I followed their guidance. It's quite incredible. My two memories of the ocean are actually one of reverence. My grandfather, although I actually had to go back to him to help me find myself because I didn't understand what I was doing. I felt out of my depth, still am. I felt lost. It was him who actually helped guide me. But as we grew up in our family, we were told to fear the ocean. So we were never allowed to actually approach the ocean. My grandfather is a traditional healer. So he forbade his children from going to the ocean. And then unfortunately or fortunately, like, we inherited that. Because I remember at some point with my mother, we had a discussion, and my grandfather was in the room. Now that at least the family is all accepting of this newfound passion of being a marine biologist and spending a lot of time in the ocean, my mom said, like, it's so unfair of you, saying to her father, to let my kids go to the ocean, yet you never allowed us. And my grandfather said something that I knew one way or another, the calling for the ocean is going to manifest itself in the family. I was afraid that if you stop this young man's going to the ocean, you might lose him. That's why I said, let's let him do that. Let's let him explore the ocean, because it's bigger than what we see. It's bigger than just the work he needs to do. And for me also, like, since I've been there, there's so much freedom in the ocean. So it reminds me, it shows me of the future that I imagine. But it's a space where I can be free. It's a space where I can run to and let go of all my troubles and just be free and be calm and feel like no judgment. A friend of mine helped me even quite recently to articulate that. He said, like, every time when you fall on land, you're going to hit the ground. But if you fall in the ocean, it will always embrace you. So, like, it's a space of freedom for me because I feel embraced constantly as I'm trying to figure out what is it that I'm doing there. So this for me really is now gonna be a moment to just open a window beneath this big blue blanket, because the journey as it begins, I am not sure of what I'm doing. I'm not sure at how far I should be going, and I'm overwhelmed by two worlds. I'm wearing a scientific hat. I understand the ocean from those lenses I was taught in the textbooks in the lab. But my grandfather on the other side is taking me deeper and deeper to understand the things that were told to me when I was young, but now I'm in the position whereby he can tell me that this is why we meant you should never approach the ocean when it's dark. This is why we always said, take a shining coin when you're approaching the ocean. So I'm navigating this space. There was even a time whereby I went to do a survey. So 30 minutes of my survey is me being a scientist. The next 30 minutes is me being in a space where I'm praying. So this is now the window I'm opening into the depth of my understanding and the connection to the ocean. And this really, I've alluded to it in the beginning, started with this fundamental question for me: where are South Africa's kelp forests? Because for me to be able to conserve, or actually for anyone to be able to conserve a species or a space, we need to answer that very simple but quite fundamental question: where is it? What is it? So using remote sensing, that is what I was tasked to do, to find out where is South Africa's kelp forest. A little bit of science, and I think it ends here. So the project requires me to use remote sensing, satellite imagery. The satellite that I was using is called Sentinel-2. So like, just like a bird flies over, looking down into the horizon, a satellite does the same thing, and it takes these snippets along its flight path. And then what I would do, I would download these snippets or these images, and then I would analyze for chlorophyll content. So I looked at the NDVI to find out where are the kelp forest. I masked out all the plant vegetation on land, and then I would be left with a strip of what could be any photosynthetic vegetation in that space. But then I would take it a step further. I would go to a number of areas along South Africa's coastline to see if what I am detecting is actually kelp forest. So in this space, I'm trying now to develop this map for South Africa. I'm starting to see glimpse by glimpse this kelp forest. I'm still afraid of it now. I got the sense, okay, it's this lush. I haven't really delved deep to witness firsthand what it looks like. So now I start wanting to do this. This is when, for my family, it becomes a little bit tricky, because I explained to my mom that I want to venture deeper into the ocean. I want to explore what the ocean looks like. I said the same to my supervisor, and my supervisor said to me, Loyiso, how good are your swimming skills? Because like the validation, the ground truth, that required me to stand in the coast with a GPS in my hand, and then I could say, this is the visual observation, and this I can tie it to that GPS coordinate. But I wanted just to see, like, what is there? What is there? And my family is freaking out in the side, and my supervisors are asking, like, can you really do it? I can't really swim. I had an encounter back then in a swimming pool at CPUT. I was swimming there at the best I can, but I almost drowned. So I say to my supervisor, you know what, Dr. Mark Rothman, I once almost drowned in the pool. And as I was going down, I ran out of steam in the middle of the pool. Yeah, and I went down. Somehow I was so calm. I have no idea why, but I was so calm, and I thought maybe just reach the bottom of the pool and push yourself up and then figure out what to do. And that is exactly what happened. I think it was like a 2.4 meter deep pool. So it was, yeah, a bit scary when I look back. But at the time I was overwhelmed by this calm. I sank, and then I touched the bottom of the pool, and I propelled myself up. And then when I got there, I looked for where is it close in terms of fall, and I swam rushingly towards that wall or form of safety for me. That is all I could say to my supervisor when he was asking, can you swim? I have no idea what in that story made him feel like, okay, I think you can go to the ocean. But then like I was stuck in a 10 millimeter thick wetsuit. So like I was literally like a ball, a balloon, just floating on top of the ocean because I really wanted to see this kelp forest. And what I saw, like, I exploded my mind. I saw these forests that are standing upright and dancing to the waves and dancing. And it was such a beautiful day that I could see the golden fronds and take me. I don't know, like maybe it was meant to be, but for me, that was the biggest hook. But to show how novice I was, as I'm sitting here floating on top of the water, a tiny fish swims by. And then it just, because when you're wearing goggles, you can only see within that field of view. And it trips in. Like, yo, it shocked me. And I was like, what is that? And I tried to propel myself. And yeah, maybe it was a reminder, okay, you've enjoyed enough of new things. But because after that, I said, like, okay, I think I'm good now. I want to go back to the safety of land. But from that day, I kept going back and back and back and back. I learned to perfect the craft. I spent a lot of time in the swimming pool at UCT learning to swim because I wanted now to go even deeper, to explore this forest deeper and deeper. And I was quite lucky because I met the folks from Sea Change. These are the folks that made the movie My Octopus Teacher, if any of you has seen that movie. So like we got to explore the kelp forest in Simonstown together, which was quite incredible for me because now at least I was in the safety of a group because I didn't trust myself to be out there alone. So we explored the ocean, we explored the kelp forest, and as I'm mapping, I started to get deeper insight of how does this ecosystem function, what makes it tick, what does it look like, and then like I gained more and more appreciation to the extent that I started calling myself a kelp hugger, because now that I saw what is it that I was working towards, I was also quite eager to share it with the world. I went back home and I told my family, thank you for allowing me to do this. You have no idea how it looks like. You have no idea. And I tried to depict the picture, and then no one was really getting it at home. Like, forest, underwater, what are you talking about? Like, okay, so what anyways? So that helped me in a way to step back, to take off my head as a scientist and say like, well, true story. I was told about the significance of the ocean. I was told about the significance of nature around me. So I tapped on that. I said like, if I can sit down with my family and start sharing it as a story. So everything that happened since when I get in the car going to the ocean, and when my first encounter, feeling very, very cold, super scared, curious, being bombarded by like amazing sounds all around me, all these sounds bombarding me. So I took them as is, as raw as they are, and I package them into a story as I shared with my family. And day by day, I could see their attitude changing. I could see them now being more curious. So they would ask me, what did you see today? What was new? How did you feel? Yeah. So do you want to eat more such that you feel less cold? Because yeah, I also depict how I shiver after every cold immersion. I shiver. And when I started this, I spent a lot of time without a wetsuit. So like every time, 20 minutes, 25 minutes later, I come out, I'm dying, I'm freezing, what's happening? So like I would share these stories. So my mom would come and say like, okay, like we need to feed you because like, yeah, you're gonna freeze to death. And then this helps me to shape for us to be able to know where we are going. We always need to go back and look at where we're coming from. So I drew from that route. And then I always depicted the picture. It is exactly what we see above the ocean. That's what we find beneath. And profoundly, my grandfather shared to me a story that depicted biogeography. He said, like, have you ever thought, grandchild, why fish would never cross certain curtains in the ocean? At the time, I didn't really understand what he meant. He said, like, why do you think fish will only swim to a certain point and turn back? Why do they not just go everywhere in the ocean? And when I thought about it, I was like, is this man maybe talking about biogeography? Is he talking about these boundaries that are there based on temperature and everything in the ocean that we never think about? So I always go back and I drew, and I also saw how many similarities are there in indigenous knowledge and the science that I was learning in the classroom. So the clearer these visions for me are getting now. So I'm understanding who I am as a young man. I'm embracing my grandfather's knowledge. I'm embracing this newfound love and passion for the ocean. Then I'm starting to realize that I need to do more. I need to share more with other people like me from the same background. I need to spark this interest. And it also goes back to a realization that if we are going to protect this space, we will need more people to be present. And it's only going to have people present if you speak to their hearts. And then I often say, what are kelp forests? If these are not trees that ventured into the ocean, I also don't know. Because when I'm down there, I feel completely in a forest. I'm using a different mode. Yes, I'm not walking, I'm swimming. But everything is the same, if not more, which is what is also quite extraordinary for me. I do remember coming across a quote from Charles Darwin himself, who said, I can only compare these great aquatic forests with the terrestrial ones in the intertropical regions. Yet if in any country a forest was destroyed, I do not believe nearly so many species of animals would perish as would here from the destruction of kelp forest. So now, as a scientist trying to embrace what kelp forests are, and I see this quote from quite more than, I forgot the year, but I was quite astounded about how he reached this conclusion, like quite early in our appreciation of kelp forest. And then I used that to anchor me. I used that to actually drive me to realize how kelp forest ecosystems are important. And then now I started to gain better understanding globally of what are the threats the kelp forests are facing. And then a common theme always comes. We understand that we are losing kelp forests. In some areas, they are expanding, including South Africa. We don't have enough people aware of this. So how can we actually get people to help us to safeguard kelp forest ecosystems? The ocean on its own is very connected. So how do we actually take care of kelp forest, because I'm a kelp hugger, but also at the same time take care of corals, take care of penguins, because the system is hugely connected. So my journey started from that, and it became even wider. And then I also realized that if I go back, if I look just far back in time, someone would have interacted with these kelp forest ecosystems. There is a culture here no one speaks about. And I was fortunate because I was speaking a lot with someone who brings the cultural lenses, who brings the indigenous knowledge into my thinking. How do you think these systems would have looked like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago? And then I started to uncover things like even the voyagers back in the time used kelp as sea marks, similar to our landmarks. So they would set sail and then they would follow a certain course because they know they will find a kelp forest. If right now, when we are actually out at sea, we see otters wrapping their babies in kelp forest, how would they have been looking back there? So like it took me into this different dimension of trying to understand the connection now. It went beyond kelp forest ecosystems alone. And then luckily last year, 2 years ago, we made a movie that helps me to articulate this. And the next slide, I would like to just show you this, just to capture what these ecosystems mean, both in the scientific lenses. But I strongly believe that if we use science alone, we will never get the conservation that we want to do right. We will never meaningfully protect these species because we need harmony. Do as nature does. It's only healthy when it's diverse. So we need to adopt and develop diverse methods and approaches in how we tackle the issues that we are faced with. So this is the story that the next clip that I want to show kind of shapes.
Phansi kwelanga, a story of who we are is always brewing. Here, at the tip of this great African continent, the sea's richness provided the essential ingredients that shaped modern man. Since the beginning of time, the seas have sustained us, shaped us, carried us, stretched us, and continually calls us. Our connections to the sea are as deep and diverse as our people. I know her as Unolwandle, our mother ocean, and whenever she calls, take heed. As South Africa continues to grow its ocean economy and strives for a sustainable future, we must recognize our deep connections to the sea, the sacred spaces, the places that nourish our bodies, our minds, and our souls. To get it right, we must seek the wisdom of those who came before us. As the Xhosa proverb says, inyathi ibuzwa kwabaphambili.
Cela ubathethelela abahle impande zemithi sicele kona abahle amagqabi kanzi ezenjalo kusuka bathetha ngaphansi kwegagasi kanzi ezenjalo somzini emikhulu.
Our people believe that our ancestors live in the ocean.
Basifumana impilo thina mntu omdala ufumana intsikelelo zomoya xa senza intsikelelo zendlela mntu omdala esehlabathini ubunzima isikubo mntu omkhulu.
When we pass from this world, our souls journey to the seas to reconnect with our ancestors. Folklore teaches us that our very identities are deeply intertwined with the sea. It is indeed in our blood. It is where we harvest for sustenance, where we fish and collect nature's medicines. It is where we play, we pray, we learn, and where we connect. These are places where our great ancestors rest. They provide us a window for looking back into our history. South Africa's marine space is a treasure trove of iconic seascapes that occur nowhere else on Earth. And they are places with deep value for many South Africans, past, present, and certainly the future. If we can plan with extreme care and consideration for the full range of human values, we can safeguard our intricate connections to the sea. We can protect our precious ocean cultures, and we can ensure our sacred spaces and stories persist long after we are gone. Under the sun, a story of who we are is always brewing. The decisions we make now and the way we develop our blue economy can make all the difference. By safeguarding these and more areas of cultural significance that are strongholds of our deep connections to the sea, we honor those who came before us and walk these shores with iron feet, leaving a trail for us and generations to come, so we can follow in their footsteps. Amagu kunolwandle. Long live the spirit of the ocean.
Yeah, yes. So coming back, that always takes me to a different space. But I'd like to say, since we made that movie, the man that is speaking in the beginning has since passed. So it kind of changed also the overall message that we had for that movie. But like, it's also an honor for us to have met someone that was so connected to the ocean like him, who offered us guidance that requires us to take off, I did mention in the beginning, our scientific heads and our scientific lenses, but to actually let our soul lead us. Quite a weird thing for the scientist to actually figure and get right. And maybe some of us, like me, might never get it right. But it's such a humbling experience and teaching as we go through it, as I go through it on the daily. So that speaks now to, from that window into being introduced to the ocean. That small obsession I had with these magnificent Cape Forest ecosystems, their beauty, magnificence, but also at the same time understanding their fragility, and now trying to share that with everyone else to ensure that people know exactly what is it that they need to protect. So it took me to different spaces. Like this is a cave we went to here in False Bay. So there we found a lot of maidens, which are like, if you are, we're gonna rewind a couple of years, like strongly, maybe 100, 200 years, even back. And then like we are in the kitchen and you are cooking in your kitchen, which is you make the fire. And then everything that you collect, you always bring and then you prepare in this kitchen. So a maiden is almost like that kitchen, because in these caves, you can clearly see that, okay, people used to prepare food there. And then if you start sorting and going through this maiden, then you see the different things, different shells that can point you to where the food came from. And there is a strong sense of the species that are harbored by these Cape Forest ecosystems. So you start with that deeper connection, but now there's that scientific evidence showing you that even way before, these ecosystems were very important to our ancestors. These ecosystems were part of the reason that shaped who we are today. So it gives you a different appreciation of these spaces, and it sent us an intricate principle that you need when you teach people about this, that which they need to safeguard ultimately. It takes it to their heart. And in my research and trying to figure out the words, sometimes I would only have the emotion and I don't know how to place it. I came across this a quote also from Baba Dion, which says, "For in the end, we will conserve only what we love." It's easy, it's human nature. We stand and we fight and we die for the things we love, but we only love what we understand. And the world has created so much for us that we don't get to understand. We are so afraid of the things we don't understand, but it's actually part of a circle that is very important for us. And we only understand the things that we are taught. So this has been the principle, being in these spaces that I take every time when I try to share with the different people that I meet, the connection and the compel, because I truly believe that the ocean enchanted me. I felt at some point in my life that why would you choose the weakest link to advocate or to share or to spread the news? Like, come on, there's people that are better equipped to be in this space and share and see more things and spend more time. Like, why would you choose me? But also I've been humbled by the principles and the lessons that I've encountered across the way. My anchor, I mentioned, this is my grandfather. So he does not, he's 92 this year. He lost his vision. He had an accident many years ago in Simonstown, by the way. In Simonstown, he was hit by a car 40, 50 years ago. So he didn't have an issue, but as he was growing, he started having complications. So he started losing his sight. And quite weirdly, although he doesn't see, he still goes into the forest back in the Wild Coast. And then he knows exactly where he wants to go. You know where he has to go to find Elmate, to find things to heal his people. So when I would come home to him and explain things, say, "Grandfather, do you know what is an abalone?" He doesn't speak. So he say, like, "An abalone, what is that?" Then I say, "I don't know it in my mother tongue also, so I can't just say that." Then I say, like, it's like a snail. It has a big shell up. And then sometimes I could go for weeks. I'm trying to explain one thing. It has a very flat shell. And then one day I came back to him. He said, "Grandson, Inumba is that you were talking about. Those plates with the big foot, that's Inumba." And then I would connect in my language, it's called Inumba. He asked me, "Are they as big today still?" And sadly, I say no. So it's been like an anchor and a reminder for me of how these systems have been, but also how my people have been connecting to these systems in different ways. And this is my favorite article that says, "At the heart of the Wild Coast are its people and their invaluable local knowledge." So all the different endeavors that we are doing in my work to try and protect these spaces, I always try to go back to that invaluable local knowledge. Because for eons, for generations, these people have been protecting these spaces. So it's quite unfair today that we have allowed science to take over everything as if it's the only way we can use to help us safeguard these spaces. So my work has brought me a lot into this. I grew up going to these pharmacies also. I know you guys maybe know a different pharmacy. Someone has a headache, someone struggling with different things in their lives. I'm used to this pharmacy, but I've never looked and saw the ocean creatures that I see today in these spaces, because all you see here is carcass and dead things, and you become worried and scared. But like, it's connected me and re-anchored me into what the ocean means and what is the connection to my people. And then what that movie says, we need to safeguard these and more areas of cultural significance. So if we can connect our people and say, if we protect a certain species, then the cultural value will persist. It changes the mindset and it changes the need for people to safeguard, because that is a culture, ensuring that the culture persists. Many different species that are here are actually studied and are part of the pharmaceuticals that we know because of the different cancerous fighting cells that they have. To go just take further the ingenuity of culture, of indigenous knowledge. In Still Bay, there are these fish traps. I was lucky to also visit them. What is so outstanding for me is the fact that these stones that are built here are actually tied to stars and the moon. So when the moon pulls the ocean water, then how the fish are trapped in the different parts of these fish traps is quite out of this world. But it also shows us, for me now, because I have a glimpse, I don't understand it fully, but I have a glimpse. It shows us of how much of this indigenous knowledge that we have lost out. What would the world be looking like if I was still tapping into this type of knowledge system? I did say to Aisha when we were talking about this, it was quite profound to hear that Aisha also doesn't come from an ocean background. I know that Aisha and this team here, you guys are acquainted with each other. But this, for me, as I come to a close, was a way I wanted to just close a circle because I'm also someone of circles. I'm not sure, Aisha, if everyone knows your background before the ocean. So I would like you to just confirm for me if it's understood or not. Because if it's not, I'd like you to just mention where you come from before you're a marine biologist.
I think Prof. Liesel and Dr. Candice knows it very, very well. For everyone else in this audience here. So I grew up in an inland city, Kimberley, and then I went to the University of the Free State, which is situated in Bloemfontein, but also an inland place. And I'm going to start from the scratch, is that the same calling that you had when you saw the ocean, I had it actually in the passage of the University of the Free State, in that passage that's outside the laboratory. When I started it, one of my subjects, or the subjects that I had, was chemistry, mathematics, biology. I can't remember the other one, but my major at the time was IT. And I was walking in that passage. Yeah, I was walking in that passage, and I just realized that I don't like all the other subjects, but the one that I would wake up for every morning and at the time walk to varsity was zoology. And so I went to Prof. Liesel, like it was within 15 seconds, I turned around and I went to Prof. Liesel and I said, I think I want to be a zoologist. And she's like, then I'm going to make you a zoologist. That was the first meeting with Prof. Liesel that's sitting there. And she did. But yeah, so I went on to undergrad with the late Prof. Joe van As. I did my honors. That was amazing because that's where I learned to speak, which is why I can speak like this today. And then with Dr. Candice, I did the master's, and that was in nematology, but that focuses on freshwater, to eventually come to another COFC at University of Cape Town to do marine biology. And what I told Loyiso was, it's just like following a raindrop that goes through the river into the ocean. That's what the journey feels like.
Thank you, Aisha. Hold that memory of a rainbow, because I find that to be very powerful. I did hydrogeology in the beginning, guys, remember. There was a split in my group, so there was a stigma. If you are doing surface water or if you are doing geology, as students, we thought it was clever for us to make fun of each other, to say, you are not going deep enough if you are only staying with surface water. So I was part of the people that were going deep enough. But I found a complete circle, which was quite also a profound when I look back and see how I, just like the raindrop Aisha mentioned, have gone through the circle like this. Yeah, so what I'm gonna share now also articulates what we call there's connections to the ocean, and everyone in this room shared that connection. We seldom think about it because we wear a certain lens and we view our world in that lens. But like when we unpack it, these connections can be tangible, can be things that we can feel and touch, smell and see. But at some point, they can be intangible, which are things that maybe you can only perceive in your dreams, things that you cannot find words immediately to describe. So these are the different connections. I'm going to play this last clip for everyone, just to show and articulate how deep the ocean is and how much deep we need to go in order for us to understand.
Yebo ngani yami. Kungani unendaba kangaka ngolwandle thisha wami? Ngisayintombazanyana. Ugogo wami wayengixoxela indaba okuthiwa indlela yokuphila. Uyabona ugogo wami wayelapha ngesintu, eyisangoma. Wayeqondiswa amazwi okhokho bakhe ababekhuluma naye emaphusheni akhe. Uyazi ngiyakhumbula ngimbuza ukuthi kungani amadlozi ehlala olwandle gogo? Wonke umuntu unesikhathi sakhe kulomhlaba. Uma isikhathi sifika sibuyela kokhokho bethu endaweni yokhokho okuwulwandle. Emva kokuba umndeni wakho ukumbele ngaphansi komhlaba, imvula icindezela umzimba wakho bese ikhama umphefumulo wakho uze uzalelwe ezweni lamaphupho. Lapho ubhukuda khona kumfudlana omncane. Uba ubantu nomfudlana. Njengedlozi elisalincane, uzwa ingoma yomfula wokuphila bese ukhumbula ubuntu baleyo ndawo. Ubhukude wehle njalo ngomfula, ulandela ingoma yogogo bakho abakubiza ekujuleni kolwandle msukulu. Ugeleza wehle njalo ngomfula, ukhule ukhumbule uba ngubantu nomfula, umuntu wasemfuleni. Uyabona mzukulu wami, yonke imindeni nezizwe zabantu zixhumene nezibongo ezahlukene. Imindeni yemimoya, isibongo sethu thina umkhomo. Uma umphefumulo wakho ufika lapho umfula uhlangana khona nolwandle, welula umoya wakho, uthatha inkumbulo eziningi zomhlaba, uthatha inkumbulo eziningi zomhlaba bese ucula zonke izingoma zesizwe msukulu. Olwandle kuningi ongakufunda futhi kuningi ongakuhlola. Kuyindawo ebanzi ecishe ingapheli yemfihlakalo, ulwazi nezimangaliso. Ubhukuda ujule ulandela ingoma zogogo abadala. Uma ufika kumthombo wengoma, uthola ogogo abadala bahlala khona. Uma uqala ukufika basuke belinda ukwamukela ngothando olujulile. Bazokwazi kahle ukuthi uyingane kabani. Uhlangatshezwa ngokhokho wakho ekulindile ekhamse kakhulu. Lapho ungena uba idlozi elikhulu, idlozi lasemanzini, wamukela izinkumbulo, izinkoma namaphupho abantu bakithi. Msukulu, uyokwazi zonke lezi imfihlo. Kodwa ke leyo imfihlo yangesinye isikhathi. Uhlala lapha phansi isikhathi eside kakhulu kuze kube ngolunye usuku. Lapho izindaba zabantu emhlabeni zicindezela futhi udinga ukwabelana ngolwazi lwakho. Uzwa ingoma entsha, ingoma kamama olandelayo. Uyahlabelela ukuthi umphelezele. Ubhukude uziyofika ezwini lakhe uze untante uphume emanzini, uthathwe yifu likubuyisele ezweni. Ekugcineni umphefumulo wakho une emhlabeni, umama wakho olandelayo akuphuze. Lapha yawo olwandle oluncane esiswini sakhe uyakhula ukhule bese usalwa kabusha. Uyabona mfana wami, njengokusho kagogo, leli zulu wonke umuntu afuna ithikithi lendlela eyodwa kuya kulo. Alikho lapha izithunya zevangeli ezisithembise khona. Cha. Liphansi lapha ya. Ngaphansi kwamagagasi.
So yeah, when you mentioned that, Aisha, so to bring these two things together in the same room, I'm not sure if in the auditorium how we're feeling. I know we're just gonna have a brief discussion now, but when you bring them together and when you understand the depth, it changes you. It changes how you see the world. So when we were sharing and you said to me, like, I felt like a raindrop that started from the river and followed the river and ended up in the ocean. And I say, remember, it goes back up and completes the hydrological cycle. You reminded me of this. So this for me has been stories I grew up to. So I work with this group, but I was not part of this. I was struck when I saw this because these are stories that are part of me. I grew up. This is how it was okay for me to fear the ocean because this is what I understood of the ocean. So this is why it was okay when my grandfather said, you cannot go. Bring a coin if you must go. I understood because these were the stories that made me who I am in relation to my connection to the ocean, the sacredness of the ocean, it being the heart of the creator. These were the things. So to see it articulated and brought to life in this manner, like was one of the most extraordinary things. I think this is an exceptional depiction, and it's one of the very, very few animations that were used in a court case. So between a court case against Shell, it was played to articulate that intangible connection. How do you then tell someone that I want to protect this space because my ancestors are here? The generations to come are right here. How do you articulate that without looking crazy or sounding crazy? So like it was used in the court case, and then this pushed the odds towards the customary rights recognition around the cause when they said we cannot allow these spaces to be mined. And it was actually played also in the United Nations, I think it's called the General Assembly. And it was well received because now we are starting to put in a language of some form, what are these profound things the cultures, the different cultures actually have or hold when it comes to the ocean. So a journey that started from being afraid, started from like so many uncertainties and weird things that made a young man to keep going to a place he was super scared of, and then found purpose and found home, had come from that, and it had grew and grew to actually saying we need to recognize more areas for this value. So like this has been my journey and the connection with the forests of the sea. I'm so happy and honored to having the opportunity to share this with you all today, people in the auditorium and also in the chats, those that are joining online. I haven't had any opportunity to speak to Free State University, so I'm also honored for this. I have a few parting words that I like to say as I close, but I want us to just now maybe go back to the room and hear if there's any questions we can talk about. We can, like, if there's any feelings, like if there's anything, like I can open it now, Aisha, to the floor. Then I'll have the last closing remarks and bring my presentation to the close.
Okay. Thank you so much, Loyiso. I'm still a bit very touched, like sensitively touched by that video that you just shared now. So thank you for sharing that video with us as well. I'm going to open the floor to the questions, if there are any, and then we'll just go back into conversation before we have to let Loyiso go.
In the auditorium and also the people in the chats, which I can't see, and I'm
Yes.
so sorry for that. Like, please feel free to engage, to ask, to anything. This is the time.
Hi there. Earlier you said you use remote sensing to find the kelp forest. Now I know when they use remote sensing on land, it gives them some problems. For example, you can't see beneath trees. I just want to know, what are the problems that you get with remote sensing when looking for things in the ocean?
Thank you. Look at me right now. I'm putting back on my scientific hat. Yeah, it was quite interesting. It was number one, it was very challenging because I'm also taught remote sensing from the terrestrial environments. So the first thing that we had to overcome was seeing images that are underneath clouds. So clouds have a huge impact on the ultimate signature that you get from that reflectance. And then the second thing is because the water is constantly moving and you are mapping things that ultimately are in some sort of constant motion. White water, most of the times I was excited because I thought I was detecting kelp, but I found that it was white water because all of the whiteness would reflect most of the spectrum back to the satellite. So the ground truthing was quite helpful for me. And then the second issue is that the kelp sits, if this is the surface of the water, the kelp actually comes from, in our case, from the depth of 30 meters. And then it penetrates and then rests on top of the surface of the water. So like you see this, and in some cases you can see, but this is a three-dimensional environment and you are only viewing it in 2D. So it really distorted the ultimate map that we are seeing. I published my work in 2020, and like I've been having incredible discussions with scientists outside of the continent, Africa, because they say there is no way that we can, in Africa, number one, figure out how to map things that lie between that complicated depth of water because of the scatter and the loss of the spectral signature as you go deep into the ocean. So like those were some of the key issues that I found. But I was able at the very least, because kelp becomes quite clustered. So I was able to detect it. I masked out a lot of the land because the land vegetation was easy. So I just put, I developed a polygon that I put to mark out that, mask out that vegetation. And then I was able at the very least to just focus on this. In the ideal, I would say the remote sensing platform work, but we also need like to send ROVs to help us have two views, geo-reference them to dispel, not to dispel, but to actually to show that this is how it looks like from in situ, but this is what the camera or the satellite sees, because the scientists in my circles are still struggling with that because they are not happy with only seeing the map only reporting from the satellite. Thanks for that question.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I just have a general question. I want to know, what was the deepest you have been able to dive? And of the amount of times you have been diving, what was your favorite visual that you have seen?
Amazing. With scuba, I've dived up to 22 meters. All of my diving, be it free diving or scuba diving, is new. So like every time I'm that scientist that is excited about everything. I'm like, come guys, come see the roots, come see the. So everything so far has been like just amazing for me. So maybe I'm not the best person to have one specific favorite place. Like it's just been incredible. I discovered this space late in my life. So like I'm posting about everything. Like I post about the small fish that came close to my face, like, because that's how beautiful and how interesting this space has been for me.
Loyiso, it's Candice. Firstly, quickly just take off your scientific hat. That video, the last video, it was really also a very profound, different way of seeing things that I would never have even thought of. And it's such a nice, I didn't even know how to express it, but it's such a beautiful thing. And then when you said about Aisha with the rain, the raindrop, it's sort of like, it did resonate also when you showed the video. Okay, and now just the scientific hat on again. I just wanted to know, did you find when you did the remote sensing and stuff, did you find places where people thought there were never kelp and there are actually kelp?
Thanks, Candice, for that question. Yeah, many scientists, they can't comprehend how deep and intricate the ocean. So like for me also to see that video, it's a language on its own because it explains a lot of things that one can't explain. And I do thank Aisha, because had she not mentioned that, I wouldn't have thought this is an appropriate space for me to share that video, had she not mentioned the raindrop. So what was nice is that in 2012, because my study was in 2017. In 2012, there was a paper published, and then the paper along the south coast of South Africa, it was claiming that kelp is expanding. So many people would have to take scientists, and I'm sure you all will appreciate this, are very big skeptics. So like the map, number one, proved that. So we said for the first time we are mapping, we are showing that this kelp is expanding and is existing in places it was not there before. And then an example of this place is De Hoop, because that is where the kelp has established. I think it's because that is a marine protected area. So the reasons why is irrespective. So like there is that. The maps prior to my map were in in different locations. So it was not a consistent understanding of where kelp is. We depended on anecdotal data from particularly professors in science to say, I once went to a field trip in a place and then I saw kelp. So like it helped us to also say, oh, yes, someone said they saw kelp here. That's where we're gonna go and check if there's actually kelp. So it built on top of the few spaces, but it also almost created this consistent strand of kelp now. So in many places have not been mapped before, and people didn't even know there was kelp there. So yeah, that's what it uncovered for us.
That's super cool.
Louise, it's interesting you mentioning the WIP. We've been going to the WIP Nature Reserve previously with the zoology students on excursions many years ago. You're talking about age, being older, I'm ancient. But even at the WIP, even at the WIP, we started seeing it, because if you look at the traditional maps of Euglena maxima, it's supposed to be West Coast. And there's that limpet species, Symbila compressa, that is you only found on the kelp. They live on the stem of the kelp. And we collected years ago I did my PhD on the limpets. So years ago, we started collecting the small limpets, and we sort of, okay, but it could not be because it's Euglena maxima, because there's compressor, and that's when we started seeing it. And this dates back to around about 2010, 2012. We already start seeing. Now, the last time that we were at the WIP was 2018, but before that, there were people from UCT botany department, where they did the surveys and they start mapping the kelp. And what was a little bit shocking is how quickly the kelp is expanding and taking over the rocky shores and the tidal pools. So now the next question will be, in 20 years' time, what's going to happen with those tidal pools? And specifically, even in a case like the WIP, and you must know it, the endemicity, like we have with the fynbos, we also have that high endemicity with the intertidal fauna, and specifically the kelp as well. So that's immediately my question is, what's going to happen with that, even in the WIP pristine habitat, in a couple of years, because of the kelp overtaking the rocky shore areas, because it means other organisms will not be able to attach there.
Amazing. Thanks, Prof. Thanks, Prof. Lizel. So, okay, the danger of your question, you're asking a kelp hugger. So you're asking someone that cares about kelp so much. So I really love that you bring the threat in the endemism of that area. Because most of the times, because kelp is globally now celebrated, we don't see it as a threat in taking over habitats of other species. Now, fast forward 20 years from now, I think actually we might have more kelp, particularly in the spaces that are well protected. Depending on where the climate change thresholds tip, I'm worried that actually this increment is actually going to be followed by a decline in my view. That might be good for other species that need that habitat. But because kelp on its own is a habitat forming species on its own, then it means whatever other species that are associated with it, including the limpet you mentioned, will actually lose this new home. In Oman, on the Indian Ocean North, we lost kelp that was there 25 years ago. It's completely vanished. So I am actually now building a team of African kelp forest experts to help us ensure that we share knowledge, share research to track the kelp forest along the entire coastline of Africa. So at the moment, I think for me, we might be seeing decline because of these changes in climate. Kelp is very particular in terms of the temperatures of waters it attaches in. So if there's any tip, if the temperatures become too warm, they will recede towards the cooler environment. I can't say much for the other species that are there.
One not comment from me when then Aisha can go to the chat. What you must work in your presentation is for people to stop removing the kelp from the shoreline, the washed up kelp, because even removing the dead washed up kelp, we're removing an entire ecosystem, and people walk around and it says it's smelly. I mean, if you can't take the smell, stay out of the kitchen. So the kelp the kelp itself that washed up, and that brings us back to the West Coast and the whole ecology of the West Coast. So while you talking with your partners in the kelp forest, please plant that seed also of let's leave the kelp on the shores.
Amazing, Prof. Next person you see that says it's smelly, tell them to call Loyiso. It's so weird that in Senbi, when I started, I'm known as the kelp guy because I have a big mouth. So people that used to find kelp stinky, they actually love it. They would come back and say, like, we were there in Muizenberg and then we saw kelp and I thought of what you said. So small steps, but we are raising awareness and changing the shift and understanding of what kelp does in those beach ecosystems, because it's very, very important, as Prof mentions. So for the new dunes to form, kelp grows very fast. So it's an incredible fertilizer. For the new dunes to form, you need that kelp there because it traps sand and sediments and recycles all the nutrients that actually start new dunes. But like it's an awareness raising I think that we need. So yes, I love that smell. If anyone, guys, doesn't like that, please get them in touch with me. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna inspire them. I think that's the way to go. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go to the chat now. I wanted to know if Loyiso eats kelp.
Quick one to Loyiso.
Yes, please, Nick.
Thank you very much for a fascinating talk and amazing material to watch. A quick question just before you leave the kelp subject, and I know that it's not local, but the Californian kelp beds apparently, Loyiso, have been decreasing over the past few years. And I'm just wondering whether there's been any scientific feedback recently to suggest that that is related to the warming of the currents and to climate change, or whether you could just shed anything on that, just out of interest.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick, for that. Yes, weirdly, the biggest contributor to that decline. So in California, we saw almost 95% decline in the kelp forest. It's for someone like me, you can't imagine going to a space where you used to see an ecosystem thriving, and then the next day it's all barren. So that is what they are actually experiencing. The core threat was the removal, because people needed otter skin to make handbags and so there was a huge market for that, and then they decimated that. The otter is a key predator in the kelp forest. It eats urchins and other grazers. It munches on them nicely. So once they started removing them, they actually left an ecosystem of grazers without a top species to maintain their numbers. So it led to that flattening of that system. I think also around 2000, early 2000, there was an outflow from a plant that dumped polluted warm waters into the system. that further exacerbated what is happening in those waters. So the climate change is not nice now. So all the different threats and pressures are just stacking on top of the kelp forest in that region. I think there's a lot of work that is on the pipeline. They are actually replanting resilient strains of kelp to bring it back. But like, yeah, so it's not only climate change, it's anthropogenic pollution and all these other different threats, which is what we did in South Africa. We looked at these threats and said, how is our kelp doing in relation to these different threats? So yeah, that's why then I was saying in my answer, I'm worried that we are still likely gonna see a decline in our kelp. I think with better awareness and understanding and the need for us to protect this, maybe we can put mechanisms and measures in place that can save us from that ultimate scenario of a barren, because that is what it actually ends up being in other parts of the world. Thanks, Nick, for that. I hope, yeah.
Thank you very much, Loyiso.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Loyiso. I'm going to go to the chat now. The first one is from Marie, who's saying, thank you for this conversation. Super enriching. I'd like to know if you would elaborate on how mapping and documenting can have an impact on protecting a territory. You've mentioned going to the justice classes with Shell. In your experience, which tools were the most efficient to protect?
Okay, thanks, Mari, for that question. What now, back my scientific hat on, and normally when you start something as a novice, you are often worried that you have imposter syndrome. I'm speaking about myself. I didn't realize now when I look back that imposter syndrome is very, very important and good, because that helped me. So I questioned a lot of things. For an example, in our data set for the kelp territory, we had so many gaps. We don't have satellites. The question came from the auditorium. What are the challenges you face when you are using remote sensing to actually detect this? So we don't have a lot of satellites that are ready or are capable of capturing these images in the ocean environment. It's already challenging in the terrestrial. It's even worse in the ocean environment. So what I figured in my space of being afraid is that if you actually ask the people that have been, which is also, I'm going to go back to Prof. Rizal, that have been going back and forth or existing and interacting with this system, that is data on its own. So that is indigenous knowledge, local data, or community knowledge, but it is data. So that for me has been quite profound because it helps me to paint a mental picture of how these systems looked like before we actually started mapping them. So I think using anecdotal data as we accept it as science, Prof. Liesel's data is going to qualify as anecdotal data. My grandfather's knowledge is not going to qualify as that. So what we need, because you're asking what are the tools, is to make space for out of the science type of data that helps us to understand and visualize these systems better. So that alone is a rich data set which we are not having. Having a map also really helps because then you can start to see where these things are. But scientists are trained to stay within our confines of our lab coats. That is one tool that is disadvantaging us because when it comes to sensitizing society, a court case is like an epitome of what society, you need to make a case why your species is important. So like, because we as scientists are not really trained to communicate our science effectively, then we have the brilliant science, but we can't articulate it such that people take it and say, these are the issues we need to deal with because they just can't see it or can't connect to it. So I think like science communication at a very early age is very important in our curriculums. A scientist must not leave the premises of a university thinking like it's enough to be a scientist. We need to realize that out there is interdisciplinary. Your question you're asking as if maybe you were there in the beginning. If you were, I said the surprises that await this cohort out there in the world, you realize it's much more interdisciplinary. I relied in my mapping so much in social scientists, something that we never think about. Citizen science also comes in because to have a rich data, you need to go even wider than the confines of what science and the funds and the resources and time allows us to do. So I would say like those are the key things. Let's be deliberate in what data we want to use, or actually let's make space for different sets of knowledge to help us to communicate our science. Let's teach our youth, our young scientists, early career researchers to communicate their science effectively, and let's reward them. Let's show them that there is benefit to being able to publish that paper that explains the p-value, but to also simplify the concept to a 3-year-old such that they have an idea of what you are talking about. So those are the key tools that I think we need. Taking it to things like this, because in my work now we call it media advocacy. So we create short movies that with a punch speak to the heart of the policymaker. The last movie spoke to the heart of a judge, because we needed the judge to understand and visualize and resonate with the customary rights holders that were saying Shell is taking away our heritage. So those are the key things that I would say are important tools for us to consider. Thank you.
So Marie said that she's not in a space that she can unmute, but hopefully that answers her question. And then a final remark, which I actually really love. Okay. Marie says, thank you very much. This final remark, and then like you spoke about circles, I like the comment from Jenny Wagner. So you said that when I spoke to you last week and I spoke to you about a drop that moved from the river into the ocean, it made you think to share that video with us. And you shared that video with us, and it was just so profound. And now Jenny Wagner says, with regards to the story of spirits going back to the grandmother well, I read somewhere that we come from the same clade as whales. There's evidence in our common anatomy. And this is so interesting that the story connects our spirits to the whales. I just want to add on to that is that myself, Prof. Liesel and Dr. Anders, we lost a friend last year who drowned in the ocean. And on his birthday, this was a month ago. So I went out on a boat to the ocean. And when I was watching that video that you shared, it brought his memory up. And on that day, a whale jumped. So where there was just this tears, when I saw the whale jumping, the memory changed, because I felt like he's telling me to smile again. I could feel his energy that day. It was on his birthday. And so I really appreciate that video, and I appreciate the comment, and appreciate that I'm sharing this with the audience that I have so much history with. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. And
Yeah,
thank you,
thank you. That went full circle now. So with that, Loyiso, I want to say thank you very much. This was a very amazing experience. Thank you for bringing science, again, and storytelling, bringing all of that, the creativity, all of that together. And thank you for sharing your passion with us, which we can really see as you are speaking. Also for taking the time. Oh, yes, the second person that's asking now is Penelope. Both videos. Sabine also, she's left already. She had to unfortunately leave, but both of them are asking if they can get the links to the videos. So if you can share the links, I think it's on the PowerPoint, but if Mariette can maybe then share it in the chat, or we'll email it to everybody, because it's on YouTube, right?
They are both available on YouTube, yes. Yes.
Okay, so yes, Penelope, we will share. Yes, Loyiso, thank you so much. And we know you are really busy. I mean, we had to speak to you between meetings and conferences and workshops. We really appreciate that you took the time out today.
Thank you so much, Aisha. And thank you so much to everyone. Yeah, I said to Aisha, it's seldom that I get time to do this type of work, because it's very close to my heart, and this is what it's all about for me. It's sharing the passion, it's spreading this fire of love of the work I do, and also just changing the lens, or instilling that need for people to realize and be aware that we walk around in the world wearing a set of lenses. So now and then it's okay for us to take them off and see how different the world is. And this might sound like it's an idiom or a metaphor, but it applies in our everyday life. I prepared these few notes that I wanted to just share with everyone as my closing words, that we need to always take nature's guide. And for me, that has been nature thrives in diversity. So if we find ourselves in systems that do not promote diversity, in systems that push out diversity, then we already know that that is not how nature does its things. Then that, for me, that monoculture is probably a sign that things are gonna go wrong. That we should always realize that the knowledge, the different knowledge systems are core if we are gonna reach helpful decisions through our science. Those life-long glasses we've been wearing, it becomes like a slap in your face once you really take them off and see how different things are. Also, there is a future you wish for, particularly the people in the auditorium. There's a future I wish for. You are going to be the change. You have to create that future. What does the ocean mean to you all? It's always going to revolve and transform, but you should always keep true to the heart. We need more heart in the scientific space, guys. We don't have a lot of that. We have facts, accuracy, and everything else. And I thank you all so much.
And I would just also like to say thank you to Loyiso again for sharing his story and showing that we need to look at things from both sides and have a bit of heart. Sometimes it's not good, but other times it's necessary. And to see things not only with the one vision looking forward, you have to take everything into perspective. And yeah. So thank you very much, Loyiso. We really appreciate you giving up your time to tell us your story.